So here's some of the swing changes that I've made over the last month. On the left is before, and I had this real tendency to take my hands and the club well away from my body in the backswing. And you can see there that's on quite a sort of steep plane, and my hands are kind of outside my toe line quite a bit here, and the hand path is not deep enough. So the depth is basically where your hands relate to your toe line. You can see my hands are still outside my toe line here. So that was the first thing that I had to fix, is the way I took the club away. So I'll just go on to what that causes. So as I got the club then to the top, there was always like a real kind of lack of turn with me. So I'll show you the difference on the right, and with that, in terms of the lack of turn, it would bring the club down on a pretty steep plane, and my hands were really outside that toe line on the way down. So yeah, that would just kind of cause my hand path to get too out. The club would move a little bit across the ball. This was actually a really bad strike, and I was just struggling to control the strike and really struggling to hit draws. I used to hit draws, and these were kind of like low scuttly fades, which were horrible. So the change was necessary, and this is how I went about it. So the first part was just trying to get this takeaway right. So you can see how my hands on the right here have moved much more in, and what that does is it gets me onto a much better plane in the backswing, and the main difference here is the hand path is a lot deeper. So once I get that depth to the hands, you can see there's way more depth at the top of the swing. And by the way, this is me practicing in a net at home, and that's really important as well, just doing like purposeful practice, and just repeating the movement in a scenario where the result doesn't really matter. For me here, I was just feeling the movement. So you can see the way more turn on the right and way more depth to the hands. So the hands are much deeper at this point in the swing. So with that, it then allowed me to bring this club much shallower in the downswing. You can see there my hands aren't out. Hands are really out at this point. So hands are more in, club lays down a little bit flatter. You can see the club there coming underneath my shoulder. And then from there I can hit from the inside. And if I can hit from the inside, I can hit draws. It's also a bit shallower, so it allows me to create a much better, more consistent strike. So that's how I practiced it in a sort of net scenario, just lots of balls, lots of repetition, not really caring about the result. And then the real trick was transferring it to the golf course, which I'll show you. So as I mentioned before, it's key when you're trying to make a swing change to start maybe in a net, in a sort of home situation where you don't really care where the ball's going. You're just solely focusing on the movement. So that's what I'm doing here. The next stage is to get yourself on the driving range. Again, no pressure on the range. This is kind of where you're hitting balls and you're kind of seeing where it's going. So you're trying to relate the movement to the ball flight. So that's what I did there. And then the next stage is to get out on the golf course in a kind of non-pressurized situation and video your swing, make yourself really accountable, but make sure you're making that new movement.